Hello, it's Jennifer Mcguire, and I am here to help celebrate STAMPtember. It's a month-long celebration with Simon Says Stamp, and I have some fun techniques for you today. I'm going to be using some products from Hero Arts, and actually these are from Hero Arts and Sizzix. The main product I'll be using is this stamp and embossing folder combo. It's a flourish stamp and a flourish embossing folder, and when they use them together, they're fantastic. But I'm going to show you 3 unique techniques that you can do with this product to create different backgrounds. I use the same color scheme, but the techniques are quite different. So the first technique I'm going to do is a faux letterpress, which is a very popular technique, but I'm going to add stamping to it. And that's what I did for the background on this card here. So we have the soft pool that's kind of pressed into the paper and the darker pool that's raised up on the raised areas. You can see it better there. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we have the embossing folder and the matching stamp. They come together, and we're going to ink these with Hero Arts shadow inks. For part of it, I'll be using the Hero Arts soft pool, and for the other part, I'll be using the Hero Arts mid-tone tide pool. So it's lighter and darker version of the same color. And these inks are great because they slowly absorb into the paper and smooth out over time. So it's great for this technique. You can try it with other inks though also. So I'm using the darker of the 2 colors to just stamp the background stamp onto some white cardstock. You can use any cardstock for this. I personally like the Nina white cardstock, but anything should work. However, I find that when using embossing folders, a smooth cardstock is a little bit better. So I'm just going to press this ink right on here, and there we have a stamped background. You could stop here and just use that if you wanted to. You could also take this piece and just put it right into the embossing folder as I am here and run it through, and you'd get a raised stamped image. It's really quite neat, and you can see through it to see how easy it is to line up the stamped image with the embossed pattern on the folder. However, I want to take this one step further. That's just the basic way to do it. I want to add some faux letterpress into this. So I kind of went off the screen here, but you'll be able to see enough. I'm taking the soft pool ink, so the lighter color, and I'm kind of smearing and dabbing the ink all over the front of the embossing folder, the inside front. It's the side that says Sizzix. But on the inside of the embossing folder, I'm just covering it completely with pool ink. So all the areas that are sticking up there will get the ink. And then I'm going to put my paper into it. And again, you'll be able to see through to see where the stamped image lines up with the areas of the embossing folder. So I'm just going to take this, and you want to be careful not to let the ink touch the paper yet until you're ready to close it. But it's easy enough. You can just line it up as you see I'm doing here, and I'm going to press that closed, and you can see that pool ink that was smeared inside the embossing folder. So I'm just going to run this through my die cut machine as I would any embossing folder. You could do this with many different machines, and this will press all that soft ink into the paper, and all the valleys will have the soft pool color, and all the raised areas will have that stamped image. And then there's just a little white outline between. It's really quite beautiful. Now this ink will kind of seep into the paper and dry smooth over time and give a great, pretty look to the background, and you can see it here. It looks quite nice. Now I wanted to also show you how I did the label on all of these cards, this little greeting embellishment. I used this Hero Arts Sizzix stamp and die set. These are great because you can get the perfect cut for your stamped image. And this is actually a holiday set. It says "Have a Jolly Holiday," but I'm going to cover that up and use it for a thank you so much message. So even though these are all holiday stamps, you can change them up and get more out of them by just kind of covering pieces up or just changing the way you use them. So first I'm going to stamp this message, and this is the thing I like about these Hero Arts Sizzix stamps is you do the stamping first and then you do the die cutting, so you don't have to worry about lining up your stamping perfectly. I used a Hero Arts soft granite ink, which is a nice gray ink, and it'll dry smooth over time also. I'm going to take the die and line it up and use just a piece of art masking tape just to hold it in place. You could skip this part, but I think it's helpful so it doesn't shift when you go to die cut. So I'll just line it up and then run this through my die cut machine. Now the nice thing about the Sizzix and Hero Arts stamps and dies is that the die has the cutting edge right on the inside edge of the die. So when you line it up with the stamped image, you know exactly where it's going to cut. And there you have it, a perfect stamped image. And I love that frame, even though it is holiday. So here I'll show you the inside of the die. You can see that cutting edge is right on the inside. And then it just lines right up with the stamped image and cuts perfectly on the inside edge. So you get a perfect cut every time. Now I needed a greeting to go over that. You could punch any circle and put a greeting in it, but I noticed that this set from Hero Arts has these two circles with greetings on the inside, and they happen to be the perfect size to cover up the have a jolly holiday. But you could use other greetings also. So I'm using an even darker pool color ink from Hero Arts. This is called Hero Arts Ocean Dye ink. It's just a dark color, and I'm going to stamp that on there. I stamped it twice because I wasn't real happy with the first one and how it's stamped. And I'm going to take a 1 1/8 inch circle punch to punch this. You could do a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. Probably a little bit bigger would be nice to give you a nice white trim if you wanted to. So I'm going to take that and put a foam dot behind it and pop it onto the frame that we did before. And all of a sudden you have what looks like a pre-made embellishment that you bought. Really quick and easy to do, and there you've turned a holiday stamp into an everyday greeting. Now I finished this off with some strips also. I've put my piece onto the card, but I've got these little cardstock strips that I wanted to add to kind of stretch across the card to give a defined edge. However, I couldn't find the right colors of cardstock. So I'm actually making my own. I'm just using some white cardstock, and I'm smearing that same dark ocean ink that I stamped before, smearing that to cover one paper, and then I'm going to cover the other two strips with soft granite ink, the gray ink. Now I do this on my Ranger craft sheet so it's easy to clean it up and I don't have to waste a bunch of scrap paper. So here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and smear the gray ink on it. When this dries, it'll dry nice and soft and perfectly match our stamped images. So I have a perfect match every time. Now I need to go ahead and put some adhesive on the back of these, so I'm just going to hold the two together, run my adhesive down the back, and then also on the other. Now I went ahead and trimmed my card down to be a little bit smaller so that I could leave these strips hanging off the edge of the card and it would still fit in the envelope. So my card is about 3 3/4 inches wide. So I went ahead and glued these down, and I'm going to cut those to a V. I thought it'd be fun to pretend that's one strip of paper and just cut the whole thing to a V and let that hang off the edge. I love having things hang off the edge. It's just an unexpected element that makes us stand out from store-bought cards. And there we have the two ends cut to a V. Then I went ahead and added some pearls to the greeting embellishment and also onto the strip there. And before you know it, your card really pops with the pool colors and that raised background. So the second technique I wanted to show was stamping plus a kissed faux letterpress background. So this is a spin on the technique I just showed you by adding a kissed element to it. And it's what I did here on the bottom of this card. And if you look, there is some gray texture in the flat areas in the background, and that you get with the kissing technique. Now this gives you kind of more of a grungy look, and it would be great for a grungy style card, but I kept this one clean also. So I'm using that Hero Arts soft granite ink once again. I'm just going to ink up the background and stamp this onto white paper. Now this will look dark and splotchy at first, but again it'll dry nice and smooth and soften over time. So just peel that off, and I thought it'd be fun to use that granite with the pool. I think it makes the granite look like a metallic color. Now I have my embossing folder, and I'm going to take another stamp. This is the envelope liner. It's a new one from Hero Arts, and I'm inking it up also with the soft granite ink. Now this is just a background that has all these sketchy lines, so it's just going to add some texture look, like a messy texture, to our piece. So I'm setting that ink stamp aside, and now I'm going to rub my soft pool ink into the inside of our embossing folder on the side that says Sizzix, just like I did before. Now I'm going to take that inked stamp that has the gray ink on it and press them together. So I'm kissing them together, transferring some of that gray ink from the stamp into the embossing folder. And you can barely see it, but there's some texture in there. And I'm going to take my stamped piece and line it up, being careful not to let that ink touch the paper until I know I have good alignment with the embossing folder. And there we go. I'll go ahead and close it once I have it lined up, and then run it through my die cut machine. And here you can see the gray that transferred from that stamp. You could use a text stamp, any kind of simple lined stamp for that kissing technique. And there's a closer up look at what the final results are. And then I added the embellishment of the greeting just like before. I colored a strip with the gray ink and added some pearls also. Now I think this technique is kind of fun because it gives you such unique results, and I thought I'd show you another example because I think this would work really well with kind of a grungy card. So I decided to use some olivey green colors. I used the Forever Green Mid-Tone Shadow Ink from Hero Arts. It's a medium shade green. I'm just going to stamp that on white paper. This is one of my favorite of the mid-tone shadow inks. It's really quite nice. Now I'm taking that same Forever Green ink and inking up the envelope liner as before. This is just another example to show you different color combination. Then this is the soft olive shadow ink from Hero Arts, and I'm going to put this on the inside of the embossing folder. So this will give me the letterpress look. Now of course before I put the paper in, I'm going to kiss these together. So I'll take my stamp with the darker green ink and stamp it against the embossing folder with the lighter green ink. When I press this in here, it'll transfer the darker ink into the embossing folder. Now the results of this will look kind of splotchy and messy at first, but I think when you put it on a finished card, it gives you a nice kind of grungy, vintagey feel. And you can see that darker ink on this embossing folder. So I'll put the paper in here. You want to be really careful again to not let that ink touch until you're ready to close it up and have good alignment. But it's quite easy to do. So I'll just close this on here and you'll see the ink start to transfer. After running through my die cut machine, you can see that great texture you get in the background there. So you can get really great looks with different color combinations. Okay, so back to the cards we're doing here. Technique 3, I'm going to use stamping and embossing on acetate. I love acetate because I think it's a great unexpected element to add to a card. And I used it on the bottom of this card here. So you can see through actually to the inside of the card. Now let me show you a closer up look at what this looks like. I think it's really fun. The stamped white is raised and you have the embossing on the acetate, which actually gives kind of a fine white line around it too. It's really quite pretty in real life. So I'm taking white Stazon ink. It's my favorite ink to stamp white on acetate. I'm going to ink it up really good. And I'll take an acetate note card from Hero Arts. It's my favorite acetate to use, and I just cut it down into different pieces, or you can use it as a note card. And I'll take the note card and lay it right on to the inked stamp. Now, you want to be really careful here not to move or let it shift. If you're uncomfortable, you could tape your acetate to the table and use a stamp press to get quick and easy stamping without any mess up. But I've found that this is pretty easy for me to do if I'm just really careful. If you do mess up, by the way, you can clean it with a stamp cleaner or with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. But there you have it, nice crisp white image on acetate. Now you want to let this dry for quite some time so that you don't mess it up. So just let it dry. If you're really careful, you could heat it with the heat gun carefully to let it dry, but I think it's best just to let it air dry. Now I'm going to put my acetate into the embossing folder, allowing it to line up, and then I'll put this through my die cut machine, and I just run this through as I would if I were embossing paper. It really doesn't matter that it's acetate. And if you don't have any acetate on hand, try some of the packaging that you get with some of your stamps. It works well. So there you have it, a great raised edge around your stamped image. It's really quite pretty, and it gives you actually a little bit of a white line from where it stresses the acetate around the stamped image. So let's go ahead and assemble this into a card. I wanted to show you how to do that little acetate border on the card. So I have a Hero Arts Snow Note card here, and I'm just going to cut off a bit of the front of the card, just enough to make this strip hang off. So cut off a little less than the width of that acetate strip. By the way, the rest of that embossed acetate that I have, I'm saving for another project. So now that I have this front of the card cut off, I'm going to run some adhesive just along the front edge, and then I'll take my stamped acetate here, line it up with the bottom, and press it down onto that adhesive that I have on the bottom or on the front flap of the card. So just press this down right here. And you could use either side of this acetate as the front. It really doesn't matter. Now, I don't want that adhesive to show through, so I'm going to take another piece and cover up that adhesive area. So this is a piece that I just covered with some gray ink, as I did before, and I'll just cover up that area where those two are glued together, kind of sandwiching the acetate between it. Now this piece was a little too short, but I plan to trim my card down a little bit. There we have the trimmed card. Very quick and easy to do. And I wanted to add some color on the inside of the card so that some color showed through from the outside. So I'm just taking some pool paper and gluing it to the inside here, and that allows it to show through. And then of course I'm just rounding the corners of the card just to soften it a touch. And so here you can see that you can't tell where the acetate is adhered because it's sandwiched in there, and it allows the pool to show through on the inside. Then I also went ahead and added a stamp strip to this and the stamped greeting embellishment and some pearls. I hope this encourages you to try your stamp and embossing folders in fun new ways. If you have any questions, please visit simonsaysstamp.com. Thanks for watching.